time is 6:33, so I will call the work session of the mayor and council for the city of Snellville, Georgia, Monday, March the 10th, 2025 to order. We do have a quorum. All members are present. Normally, we review the regular business meeting first, but we have a couple things on there that I think are going to take a little while. So if you all are agreeable, we do have a guest tonight, Michael Shaw, who's the director of Gwinnett County Office of Emergency Management, is going to give us just a short presentation about what their office does and kind of how they coordinate with the cities. And so we thought we would let him go first so he doesn't have to sit through all of the rest of our.
Michael looks very familiar.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Again, my name is Michael Shaw. I'm the Director of Emergency Management for the Gwinnett County Office of Emergency Management. My goal today was to give you guys a very brief overview of what our office does on a daily basis, as well as during emergencies, and more importantly, how can the city of Snellville participate in those actions as we get it. So as I go through my overview, I will try to highlight the areas where I hope we can get city involvement throughout the course of the year. On a very large scale, I'm going to try and explain who we are, what we do, and how we do it. I'll give you a little bit of a spoiler. How we do it is with the participation of all of our stakeholders, including the cities. But I wanted to start off and show our county police department's organizational chart. As you can see, administratively, our Office of Emergency Management does fall within the police department. And I say that administratively because of the fact that, as I'll point out later, there is a state requirement. It's the State of Georgia's Emergency Management Act that says that every county in the state of Georgia has to have their own emergency management program. And that emergency management program represents all of the citizens and organizations within that county. So when I say that we represent Gwinnett County and help to manage Gwinnett County's emergency management, I truly mean that from a geographic standpoint, not Gwinnett County government, not Gwinnett County Department of Transportation or the fire department or the police department. I work for the city of Snellville just as much as I work for any of those other organizations. I share this just because the next slide, I'll show you our staff. This is where we are. We are a staff of nine full-time members, and we also have one sheriff's office liaison. So administratively, we exist within the police department because we don't have the staffing to handle our own payrolls and HR department and things like that. We have 9 members and a liaison to help with staffing exclusively for the emergency management program that helps to serve the entire county. Say that we are disaster focused in these 4 areas. I'll go into the definitions for each of them a little bit. I don't love the fact that we say that we are disaster focused, because when people say that, when they think of emergency management, I'm sure more than a couple of you that have heard of emergency management before thought of us as the bad weather people. And that's exclusively our realm. If you haven't seen us do anything, we probably sit there just watching radar all day, waiting for that next big thing to occur. And that's not true. Thankfully, Gwinnett County isn't hit with enough disasters to warrant our existence. So we are very often preparing for, as my definition would say, any event that can meet or exceed the normal operational capacity for one or more of our stakeholders within the county of Gwinnett. So yes, it absolutely could be a bad weather event, a hurricane, a winter weather event, whatever it happens to be. It could be a man-made event, whether that is an imminent dam failure or some sort of intentional harm that's targeted at the county. But it could be non-emergencies that people would define them as, Large-scale events, obviously, with FIFA coming next year to the city of Atlanta, that's an event that's not just going to impact city of Atlanta, that's going to have a whole metro Atlanta impact. So we're very involved with the planning and preparation for those kinds of things. A few years ago during election season, we got involved with early voter turnout and helping to make sure to support the efforts that were going on for that, because elections was not, they had never seen early voter turnout to that level. So we assisted them with those kinds of activities. We've assisted with, I've already mentioned sporting events, major festivals, anything like that that could draw larger impacts, that has that low frequency, high impact kind of event. But we remain to be disaster focused because a lot of the preparation and planning that we can do for that has potential application for all of those happier kind of larger events that go on throughout the county. So there really are four main areas when you talk about the concept of emergency management. We have mitigation, which is the reduction or elimination of risk to a community, which is different than preparedness, where mitigation is working on reducing or eliminating that risk. Preparation means we know it's coming. We can't stop a hurricane from coming and impacting the county, so we can prepare for it. We then get into the response, so that is the immediate actions that take place during an event. That's what people most likely see. For many of you, you have received situational awareness assessments, the weather assessments that we've sent out from our office, or gone into an emergency operations center activation, where the city has sent representatives to our EOC to work collaboratively to respond to a specific incident. And then the final one is recovery, which is really just getting the community back to at least the same state as it was before the incident, but hopefully a little bit better. Our goal is to create a more resilient community. So hopefully with any response initiative, we've learned lessons, we've identified gaps, we have figured out how we can do this better and incorporated it into our actions, whether it's in planning or resources, or just general collaboration and communication that goes on throughout the county between our stakeholders. I will not go deep into each of these. If anybody is interested, we host an introduction to emergency management, or the Emergency Operations Center, and we go a little bit more into detail into the documentation and laws that we're derived from. What I like to show is that at a base level, there are federal documents that we base a lot of our actions on. So the Homeland Security Presidential Directive Number 5 established the National Response Framework and the concept of NIMS, which our first responder stakeholders are very well aware of what the National Incident Management System is, and they build a lot of their command structures around the concept of NIMS and ICS, the Incident Command System. On top of that, though, the state of Georgia has the Emergency Management Act, as well as a statewide emergency operations plan. So the state says, what does a county need to provide to all of its residents? What are the expectations of a functioning government during an emergency, and what are the expectations that they'll be able to provide during the recovery of an event? It gets into some of the financial reimbursement aspects as well, and helps to identify what are the criteria that are established within during the recovery efforts on a statewide level. What does a declaration of an emergency actually mean when the governor declares one, and how does that impact the county's abilities to operate during those emergencies? But then we get into county level ordinances, our emergency operations plans, and policies, your individual departmental policies. A lot of times when I have people that are taking our EOC basics class, they will ask me, okay, what do my boots on the ground people need to follow? Do they need to look up the Stafford Act and read that and see if they're following the Stafford Act as they go and respond to trees on buildings or flooded roadways, things like that? Absolutely not. As you can see on here, things should build upon each other. This little diagram on the side, it's probably better shown as a bit of a pyramid where on the base we have our federal documentations, and if done correctly, the state has built upon those federal documents to build their state requirements, and then the county, cities, departments have built upon that, so that when it comes down to it, individual departments are still following the same policies and guidelines that they follow on a daily basis. Additionally, emergency management should never be in a position where they are telling field crews, operation crews out in the actual field doing the work what to do from the emergency operations center. If that is happening where we are directing the operations out in the field, in my opinion, something has gone wrong. Either the incident has grown to a degree that we were not prepared for, or there's been some sort of planning error to where there's definitely room to improve upon for the future. So I'll go into a little bit of each of them. The first one is mitigation. So again, it's that reduction of risk. All these photos that I'm going to show you are from the 2009 flood. There's obviously we've had some other emergencies that have occurred since 2009, but in terms of monetary damages to the county, we haven't had the same level of emergency or disaster that's impacted us the same way. So this still acts as a great case study to look at. If we look at the Hurricane Helene that impacted us last year, you remember a lot of people were talking and making comparisons to what if things get as bad as the 2009 flood, and thankfully we didn't see nearly that level of impact. Unfortunately, we know that some of our neighbors to the north definitely did see impacts that were on the same kind of level. But in terms of mitigation, reduction of risk, we could be looking at structural retrofits, sort of green infrastructure, helping to develop that. Wildland fuel reduction, so controlled burns, controlled chopping, things like that our parks do on a regular basis to reduce that kind of risk, as well as floodplain land purchases. That was probably the most notable thing that came out of the 2009 flood were the land purchases that came afterward. I'd say that that the county as a whole has never engaged in that kind of land purchasing since that time. We haven't had any kind of, again, we haven't had the kind of disaster that warranted investigation to see if that was something that was possible. I'll show you a few photos. I'm just going to carousel through these a little bit just to show you. I don't love to show damage pictures through my presentations just because, again, we don't deal in disasters on a regular basis. It's easy to focus on the disasters that bring the highlights in the fields, but the work that we do on a regular basis really typically is not this, I guess, photo worthy. But yeah, this definitely has some impacts, and this gives a little bit of gravity of how bad things could actually get, how bad this can. This actually came, somebody had to submit these when trying to get a building permit after this in 2009. And here's the flood inundation mapping for the area and the area immediately afterward. But those are the kinds of things that we can engage in as a community to help and reduce our overall risk. And I can tell you that from the Office of Emergency Management's perspective, there is very little that we can actively do, our office specifically. What we will do though is be the loudest cheerleaders as different stakeholders
continue to reduce the risks within their own community or for their own programs. I believe at least some of you here in Snellville are part of the Hazard Mitigation Steering Committee, which is a regular group that exists that our group helps to organize, which helps to identify both what are the hazards and risks that are most prominently at the forefront of the county's minds, and what are the projects that have been identified that would help to reduce those risks. And then as funding becomes available, we can make our stakeholders aware of those things to say, hey, we know you guys were talking about road sensors so you can better predict icy conditions for your roads, or updated flood gauges for your lakes and rivers and streams that impact your community. Well, we just found out that because of Hurricane Helene, although we weren't declared by the governor, we're still eligible for some of those funded projects. So that continual engagement that we see from our stakeholders, and city obviously included, that is important for being able to fund those projects that reduce the risks. We can't be the ones that file, because ultimately the stakeholders are the ones that file for on behalf of their own programs, but we can assist and make sure that they're hitting all of the benchmarks, put you in touch with the state if you have questions or need guidance with it. Happy to do all of those things and continue to check up on you to see if has the project just gotten stuck? Is it something that you found a better way to do it? Whatever the situation may be, we want to be involved and stay up to date with those kinds of things. So preparedness really is that continual state of readiness. You can see emergency management loves their circular graphs and charts. And it really is to show that as a whole, emergency management, each step should build upon the other, and it's never complete. We will never hit a point where the county is 100% prepared for anything that could ever come. We're constantly in a state of learning, and if we've ever gotten to the point where we say that we are ready for whatever comes, I think there is a serious fault in who's making those decisions, because we always need to be thinking, is there a better way to do it? Do our plans represent the best practices? But preparedness represents all of those things that I've mentioned already. Planning, organizing, equipment, training, exercises, evaluating, and improving. And I'll tell you, this is the strongest thing that we would engage our stakeholders in. So as our city partners, you have just as much of a role in helping to develop our planning as we go on. We have a basic emergency operations plan that says a lot of the general things that will happen on every single activation, but then we get into what we call our annexes to those plans that talk about what are the specific things that need to happen for each of those, for those specific either incidents, like a winter weather event that has very specific actions, or what is a support function that is not necessarily something you do on a daily basis, but it is a robust enough activity that could warrant some pre-planning, like crisis communication is a great example of that. We don't do crisis communication on a daily basis, but it applies to so many different kinds of emergencies. It has its own annex. We could write whatever we wanted to in those plans and say, this is Gwinnett County's crisis communication plan. But if it doesn't represent our stakeholders' best practices, then it's not an effective plan. We could write in there that every stakeholder will do a public announcement every 15 minutes. That's not going to happen for the vast majority of our stakeholders. So we absolutely need our city partners, our departmental partners to engage with us. So when we reach out for either a plan review or an exercise to review for those kinds of plans, it is in earnest that we're asking for that kind of feedback from our stakeholders. We want to make sure that everybody has a high level of confidence when we have to pull out that plan, take a look at it, that it still represents the best practices of all of our stakeholders that it applies to. And the city of Snellville, I know, is identified in at least two major areas. I know crisis communications is one of those, so I believe obviously law enforcement and protection would be the other major area. So any of those essential support functions that are identified in any of our plans, the city has a major role in. So they have a say and a voice in each of those kinds of things. The equipment, obviously, we as an office, we get some level of grant funding. We obviously, I've shown you how small our office is, how small our staff is. So we don't have the capacity to manage a lot of those things. So a lot of our equipment that we purchase, it ends up being in ways that are managed so that they can be managed by the people who are best to manage those items that can be recalled during any kind of emergency. I'll show you in the next photo some good examples of that. The fire department has a mass casualty unit that was actually purchased through UASI, which is a Metro Atlanta funding source that we received from the Department of Homeland Security. Additionally, it's various monitors that the police department, the fire department utilizes, triage systems. I can tell you that DeKalb County is getting a similar mass casualty unit. Once they get theirs in, we're probably going to have to engage in regional training between all of our stakeholders of how do we best utilize that as a collective region. So that will be another instance that we'll be reaching out to Snellville Police Department and saying, are you interested in engaging in any kind of mass casualty training that develops because of this equipment gap? Again, the equipment leads to the training, which leads to the exercises, etc. It is a circle. We do have items that we do manage. Right here we have a cache of tents and generators, lighting systems. We take part in a regional water purification system. So we have one of these water purification trailers, as well as, I believe there's 14 others spread across the Metro Atlanta region in case we have some major outage and our water treatment or the water treatment of any one particular area is in question. We can generate fresh, clean water on an emergency basis. One of the items that we've added recently that's not in here is it's called a compact rapid deployable. We have the ability to do to set up a mobile cell phone tower if we would ever have a large or a widespread outage for cell phone service. It acts as a cell phone tower with a satellite backup, which sounds like a very out there kind of case usage. In 2021, our public health utilized one because they had a vaccine center in the middle of a park. The park did not have great cell phone coverage, so they rolled out one of these CRDs and set it up just so that they could feed all of that information into their computer system, and they were able to work out in a big open area, so it was a safe environment that they could have a lot of throughput for that particular situation. So a great case of how that would be utilized. Training is another one. We offer an assortment of training either offered directly through our office, like the EOC 1 class that I mentioned. We offer a regular class on Web EOC, which is our information sharing platform we utilize online. Or we can request classes on behalf of or through the state, so GMA, or we can reach out to other organizations that are a part of the consortium and bring them into Gwinnett County so that the people that are having to take the class aren't having to go down to Forsyth, Georgia, or some other place, or even, I know even Cobb County is difficult to get to for some of the training events that get held there. We know that if the more classes we can bring locally for our community, the better chance that people are going to be able to send them, because suddenly it's a local class and they're having to think about housing them overnight. They can go back home. It works out for everybody for that kind of thing. We just got a new specialist, Xavier Evans, who probably is reaching out to some of our partners and making them aware of the classes that we have available. And then the next one that he has been working on is a damage assessment class, which is one of those things that go back to, it's really the recovery effort, but it is that post-disaster kind of thing where we are trying to gauge, has our community been impacted enough for us to meet that threshold to receive federal reimbursement. So if that is a class that you were not aware of, please let me know and I can make sure that whoever needs the contact information for that, we can get you set up with that so you can get your staff registered for it. Exercise is the next one. Again, I'd already mentioned some of the exercises we host and help to organize. A number one, this photo is from the active shooter exercise that we helped to coordinate at the Mall of Georgia a number of years back. But they can be as large as a full-scale exercise, or it could be something as small as a workshop or tabletop exercise. I recently just helped with a workshop with the city of Lawrenceville, just to work through some of their crisis communication things and how it might tie into the county. But we regularly do at least 2 tabletop exercises a year. We did a functional exercise in December that revolved around an alternate EOC activation. So what would happen if our emergency operations center was rendered incapacitated and we had to open at our alternate facility at the fire training center. We reach out to our emergency coordinators and make them aware of those trainings and ask for their participation. Again, this is something that we want our stakeholders' participation in. If we get through an exercise and everybody comes up with a solution that's agreed upon, and we have somebody from one organization that raises their hand and says, yeah, that doesn't actually work for us, that's a strong consideration. If we've all developed a solution that we realize doesn't actually work for everybody that could be involved with that particular scenario, it's something that probably needs more discussion. So again, when we send out those invitations, it is in earnest that we want the participation of all of our stakeholders. It's not a courtesy that we're sending that out to. All right, response. We have really 2 types of response that we're going to. It's a field response and then an EOC response. For you all, field response means, is there a resource request you guys need to help fulfill your field operations? In previous programs for emergency management, we have attempted to teach the various stakeholders how to make a response, a resource request to you, so you guys can get into WebEOC, make the request yourselves, and you would do it yourself. We realize that is so low frequency and the need is typically so high when you are needing that request. We've encouraged our emergency coordinators, just give us a call. We'll talk about it. We will do it over the phone. We want to make sure that resource request is fulfilled the first time, the correct way, as quickly as possible, so that we can fulfill that request and get it to the field crews that need it immediately. Especially if it's a situation where we're having to make a request to the state. If just because of the reason for that is on a state level, if we make a resource request to GMA, their most immediate timeline is under 24 hours. So if City of Snellville is dealing with a true emergency, under 24 hours will not necessarily cut it. So anything we can do to help to reduce that, we are going to do as much as we can. Phone calls, searching out for other solutions that would still meet the need, or at least reduce the immediacy of that need. So again, we can help out with those kinds of things. We encourage our stakeholders to reach out to our duty officer number. We have a duty officer that is on call 24/7. It's a number that rotates between a few people. If you don't have it, please come to me afterward. It's not a number we publicly publish, but we're happy to give it to our stakeholder partners. And the other one is the Emergency Operations Center. As you guys are already aware, you have gotten this leads up to from the situational awareness statements that we send out about weather that's coming, all the way up to a activation where we are asking for stakeholders to come in and staff our Emergency Operations Center to have that multi-agency coordination. Yes, most people are a phone call or an email away, but I can tell you that there have been countless times that I've seen during an EOC activation where someone was able to stand up, identify a problem, see somebody that has it from a neighboring partner that has that solution, and they can work out a solution right there at the table because they can actually see somebody that representative. They're not having to play phone tag or wait for somebody to get back to them on an email. They're in the same room. So you can facilitate a lot of those solutions when we ask for those representatives. Again, I just showed this just to reiterate the fact that if we look at the top, we have our local emergency operations center, so that is my office. Once we've activated our EOC, we are communicating with the state and federal partners, which means that we are really just working on coordination so that everybody here that's working the incident command, so your police chiefs, if there's a fire chief, whatever it happens to be, they are free to do the field operations that make sense for them. The last thing we want is for a fire chief to be working a major scene and also have to worry about where is this lead that I need coming from, or how am I going to feed my crew 3 hours from now? They need to be focused on the operation that they are working on at that time. So leave that for us. Who do we recommend to come to the Emergency Operations Center? The general rule of thumb is that we recommend everybody sending their number 2 individual. We don't necessarily, it's not that we don't want the police chief to be there in the room, or the city manager, or whatever it is. The thought is that those people are going to be busy enough. They don't need to be tasked with also showing up here. While the number 2 is probably has the institutional knowledge to know the operations that are going on throughout their department or their city or whatever they are representing. They will be in contact with the appropriate agency. They will have that awareness, and they have the decision-making authority to make many of the decisions that will be asked upon them. Maybe not all of the decisions. There's definitely going to be some decisions that they'll probably still have to, but if they aren't so green to their department that any question or task that's been asked of them, they're going to say, let me run it up my chain of command, let me call you back, let me make a few phone calls first before they can give us any kind of answer. So that's who we recommend. Every stakeholder agency has at least one primary emergency coordinator and one alternate emergency coordinator, although we recommend that there's at least 2 alternate coordinators. People go on vacation, they go out of town, they get sick, they have sick kids, etc. So having an alternate is always a great idea. And the last phase is recovery. Again, it is rebuilding, restoring facilities. There's really 2 aspects of recovery that we're focused about. It's the public assistance, so building back our infrastructure. Our buildings are in our county city buildings, the roads, bridges, etc. Building that back up. removing the debris. The debris removal is an extremely large project for a large disaster and a very costly one that needs some level of coordination. I mentioned we're very concerned about reaching the level of getting that federal declaration. As a county, it's a population-based number, so we did a ballpark figure. Where the state they're hesitant to give us a hard number, but we estimate that as of right now, we would have to reach $4.7 million worth of damage as a county, geographic county, to reach that federal declaration of damage. So when we were asked during Helene, why didn't Gwinnett County get identified for as part of that declaration? Because we didn't come close to $4.7 million worth of infrastructure damage, or infrastructure and individual damage for the county, which is the next part of recovery. And that is all the things that our residents and members of the community could be impacted with, and the costs that go along with that. So, I'm sorry, I probably went much longer than I needed to, but absolutely. Did anybody have any quick questions that I can answer?
If an asteroid, like for sure, was going to hit,
Oh my God.
like somewhere in Gwinnett County, what would the response? Like off the top of your head? Like
So-
somewhere for sure in Gwinnett County, but we don't know what.
Communications to run and hide.
It is one of those things that during any kind of event, the number one thing that always comes up is how is communications conducted? Was the county giving enough information? Was it giving accurate information in a timely manner that helped out the residents? That's something that as we get every few years, that is now a trend that has decreased in terms of people's need to get up-to-date information. So it would absolutely start with communication, and then communication of whatever that plan comes afterward.
Michael, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, so let's go quickly through the regular meeting. We have Snellville Youth Commission's going to do a report. We've got some South Gwinnett High School students to give us a civic week introduction. We have Mike Savard doing the invocation, and some students are going to do the pledge. Public hearing, we have the second reading now on the EDO 2501 for the text amendment. Anybody have any questions on those? We discussed that ad nauseum upstairs, so we pretty good. And then we had the second reading for the alcohol ordinance. Everybody have a chance to look through that. Any questions or concerns?
We're all hoping you look through it.
Yes, I did. Very good. My concerns were alleviated from what I've read through, so good with that. I'm going to skip over the last item there real quick, just to hit the rest of the agenda. We've got new business. We have the new fee schedule for the planning department. Anybody have any questions there? The community center. The bid award.
Would you just clarify that bid amount, because on this sheet, it's $1,373,000.
11 million.
11 million.
Get your numbers right.
I know.
I wish we could get it.
602,
Yeah, it's all done.
and then on Matt's agenda item summary, it just says 11,373,000. So
Okay,
let's
go with the 602.
go with the 602. Okay.
We're not gonna shortchange everybody.
Good catch, Tracy.
Yeah.
And then we have the new purchasing policy that we've been talking about for a long time, so we'll actually approve that policy. We did the resolution last meeting. Didn't we?
We made an amendment to the home rule to remove that from the charter.
So this is actually approving the policy, and then we're surplusing some public works vehicles. Okay, so then let's come back to the zoning. When did I just say that? First read. For the Summit Chase application. Questions, anybody want to discuss?
Just do a little.
Yep, if you want to
A little
update
update.
here.
Can we set a time? It won't take long. Basically, from what I understand from talking to the applicant's attorney, the covenants for the green space in the middle that was gonna be turned into houses was upheld to not allow any building on those properties. So now the applicant's gonna resubmit a plan that takes that into account, but likely look like the first plan. Because now the development can't go there anymore, so they'll have to push everything out. And once we get that plan, just put it up on the website and push it out. I don't know when it's coming, I would assume it would be before we have the meeting. Right now, it's the same plan that was presented to the mayor,
So,
planning
do
commission.
we table the first read? and-
No, let's keep it riding. I mean, there's no reason, there's a plan in place, that's what we're just
Okay.
not gonna discuss. I know it's gonna change, so really no point in discussing all that right now on the front end until we get that. If we need to pause or push after the meeting, we can do that on the second reading
The
too.
only reason that I ask that is because we table to a date certain, and that would be our next meeting. So there certainly won't be enough time for us to look at a new design.
Yeah,
So
I
I
mean,
would
But
prefer
if it comes
to,
back to the same as the one we've had previously.
well,
I think we gotta give them the opportunity to tell us what they're presenting before we
Right.
push it,
Okay.
in my opinion. They
Yeah.
get the opportunity.
Because we can always
then-
push the next meeting if we have to.
Yeah, I think that's the best play.
all right.
But I'll keep you informed, everybody.
Yeah. So is it anticipated now that it'll go back to pretty much the same as the first one was?
Yeah, or modification of that, some way, there's no other way to do it,
Okay.
with that refusal to cooperate, so.
Okay. Any other questions? Did you want to, no? Okay. All righty. Now, let's get back over to our work session agenda, correspondence. City attorney's report.
Had one follow-up. This was our vote on Parkland last week. Had a lot of communications on that. It's really started with Mr. Schultz after the meeting. He said the debate didn't sound sort of normal in considering the Parkland rezone. And so just to leave you, council can really do, it can conduct its affairs in the way it chooses in the meeting unless there's an objection to that. And so there was no objection or no call for order to be imposed. But what is the normal focus for council members in advocating is after the motion is made. And when you're doing that in the concept of a public hearing, you want to encourage the people who are participating in the for and against to say what's on their minds without imposing what would be an argument of counsel in the midst of that. Even in a normal debate, council members in advocating ask questions to show their concerns so that the people who are giving their presentations can pick up on that and say, hey, I'm concerned about the drive all the way through and how much traffic would be going through that. That kind of question, would that be a pass-through, and how do you remedy that to the advocate? You do it by questions. But then when it comes, after the motion is made, then the debate really comes to consequences. You don't cut off public opinion ahead of time, and the advocacy comes at that point really on. And so so it was a good debate. I don't think it in any way affected the outcome of it, but I think advocacy was done in the questioning phase of it, and that's what gave it that feeling of, well, we're not right exactly on the right page, and so it was just so if you want to correct that, you say point of order, debate of council that need to take place until the motion is made. You still don't have to stick with that. That's the right Robert's rules, but the council can change that and say, well, we don't want to do it that way. I make a motion that we go ahead and advocate so that people know. But you have to make that change in the procedure as a formal part of the process. And I think if we stay within that, then you won't have that feeling afterwards that, well, that didn't sound exactly right. And maybe debate was cut off by the public where they didn't get to advocate their side because they felt like the arguments had already started on what council was concerned about ahead of the property. That was my only suggestion.
Any other comments or feedback?
So if we debate and it brings up a question, can we open back up to ask the applicant?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes.
No
yes.
problem.
And in that, it was a spirited debate, and I sort of sensed in the argument could have been without a lot of the pre-debate, it could have been a first vote motion to approve that would have split 3-3. That's perfectly all right. That dies. You just and you can even make a motion to do that and second it and vote against that motion in the process in order to get it back to the floor where you can take an action approving, because you got to come out of that with some action in order for you to either dispose of it one way or the other. So.
Because in a normal, some of you haven't lived through this, but normally in the city, if we get a 3-3, the measure just dies. No action comes out of it. But we can't accept that for a rezoning. We have to get to at least a 4 vote on a rezoning. There's a few measures like that. Is there anything else? There's a few measures that might come up where you have to have something. I think the budget approvals.
Yeah, you got to do that.
You gotta
do
have-
something.
you gotta have
the things that
something
you're
done.
required to do by statute. You can't just
You
not
can't just
approve
leave it
something.
as a nothing, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if that brings up other questions or anything else, then feel free to either call Tony or Jay or myself. But, work through that. We just haven't had a rezoning like that in a while that was, that big and so many different opinions and thoughts and issues with it. And I think with town center stuff, we're gonna start seeing a lot more of that, yeah. So it's good for us to brush up on our stuff there. Yep. All right, so we've got item, we've already hit presentation, so we'll go to review of the loitering ordinance.
You got time?
Chief, yep,
Okay.
yeah.
I'll try to roll through this pretty quick. I appreciate the opportunity to talk tonight about this. I know that there was some talk about doing a juvenile curfew for the Grove area, and I just wanted to make y'all aware of a couple laws that we already have in place that kind of connect to what a curfew oftentimes will accomplish. So, and I'm not going to read you the code sections or anything like that, but the first law is loitering and prowling, and in a nutshell, what that indicates is that somebody's in an area, a place, and time that causes some level of alarm that is not normal for law-abiding citizens. So if a person's conducting that kind of activity, the police can make contact with that person. The police can allow them to dispel the suspicion that's going on. And in the event that they can't, or they take flight upon police's arrival, they can be charged with loitering and prowling. We also have just a basic loitering ordinance, and this is the city ordinance. And that just basically indicates if somebody is in an area that it is open to the public for public access, and they don't have any legitimate reason to be there, for example, like all the businesses are closed, they can be contacted by the police. We can find out that they don't have any legitimate reason to be there and ask them to leave. If they refuse to leave, then we can charge them with loitering. I know I'm going kind of fast, but there we've charged these offenses about 8 times in the last 2 years. So we just want to give you that information that we are charging it when we run across of it. Now, most of the time for loitering, people leave. Like I said, there's no reason to charge them. But in regards to the curfew, I was able to, since we're going to be talking about this, I was able to reach out to a couple chiefs that I know have curfews in their jurisdictions. And one was the Lilburn chief and the other one was the Warner Robins police chief. They were both, for the most part, supportive of that ordinance. But they're not doing any enforcement of it. So I asked them how many times do they charge people. They basically just use it as a reason to make contact with juveniles that they think are up to no good. Which would be the same thing that we would use if we had just somebody that was out ordering after hours or something like that. It wouldn't matter if they're 15 or 18 or 50. We would do it for all age groups. There was a certain level of concern through my conversations with them that if we focused a curfew, and Tony, you can weigh in on this if you're able, but if we focus a curfew on an area that is directly connected to a high minority area, it could disproportionately discriminate against that group. So it could be overturned in the court probably pretty easy if that took place. I do think our current laws are sufficient. It allows us, it's very broad, it allows us to be flexible with what's going on around the city. I don't think anybody's wanting to have a citywide curfew, at least at this point. But I do think it doesn't let us make mistakes where I think me personally, I couldn't tell the difference in a 16-year-old or an 18-year-old. But if I make that mistake and I come up to somebody that's 18 years old and I say, why are you out here? You're underage, and they say they're 18, but then they refuse to identify themselves. Then I end up arresting that person for obstruction and finding out they're 18 years old. So they really never were in violation of the curfew ordinance. So it causes us some danger, which is obviously we're trying to prevent negative contacts. So it does cause us some danger, I think, if we start enforcing those kind of actions. But obviously, y'all can act quickly. So right now, we haven't had any calls for service of any disorderly juveniles in the town or in the Grove area or the town center area, especially overnight. So, and I know y'all want to stay on top of things, but I'll get notification anytime a crime happens on city property, and I provide that to Matt Mercy anytime that happens. I'll be more than happy to share that with y'all, or Matt can share it with y'all anytime something happens in the town center or the Grove area. Just so y'all can stay abreast of any uptick in activity that's going on. But, I mean, right now, I think it's pretty much under control.
Just to weigh in, everybody,
Yes.
everything about this subject causes me concern. Legally, not from the enforcement side, but just from the constitutional side. These are weak areas where they're constantly adjudicated as improper. Loitering, all kind of gathering, restricted time periods. They have to be really rationally based on some risk. When they do affect a protected class, it gets demonstrably worse. So it's just to be, if we wade into this, we need to be really targeted in what we're trying to do and really precise with the language.
Questions? Thank you, Chief. How quick can you be on the update?
I am more than happy to push till next meeting. We have 3 minutes. So.
Okay.
I'll just highlight a brief thing. So you might be getting your recycle program postcards.
I did.
They
look really good.
Good, and signups are going on right now, which is good. Cricket Cans started to install their brewing equipment in the building, so you're not gonna see it on the street anymore, it's inside. They're starting to get pipes and put it all together, which is pretty exciting. They have 3 signed leases, and if I thought I would have given you the names of those places, but I will send you the email and let you know. And we'll work with Cricket Can, Brian, and Mercy and I will work with them to get the word out to advertise and let folks know those are coming. So it's pretty exciting.
If they'll allow us, right? Because we don't know, do they?
Yeah, I mean,
We're gonna check with them to make sure that they don't want to do some big announcement before we start running their mouths.
In our conversations with them, I think they'll take as much publicity they can get. You know, anything we can do to help, you know, they're certainly open to that. So that's moving along pretty well. We've hired a downtown development director. Yeah, a lady named Jan Harris. She's got about 25 years experience. She is coming to us from Taylor, Texas most recently. But she was the Main Street and downtown director of Dahlonega, Commerce, several other places. I don't remember all of them, but she's very qualified. Impressed Mercy and I very much. She's moving from Taylor, Texas, so you know we're on a start date in flux on there. So just get over here. Don't worry about that. Just get situated first, and we'll talk about a start date. But within the next 6 to 8 weeks or so, we'll bring her by for y'all to meet her.
Did you get her a place?
You know, she looked at the Tomlin. And she was like, "Oh, that's yeah." The offer and the salary is the same. So, that's all.
Okay. All right, and then we'll postpone the discussion on the road to the next meeting. No exec session tonight, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. Second. Second, all